Dear brothers and sisters, let us take a moment to breathe, to be still. There is so much noise in our world, so many voices, so many opinions, so many words. And yet, it is in the silence that something greater begins to speak. It is in the silence that God begins to whisper to our hearts. And sometimes He speaks loudest there. We are not used to silence. We are afraid of it. But silence is not empty. Silence is full of presence. God's presence. A presence that heals, that listens, that loves without demanding anything in return. Let me tell you a story. There are cries we do not hear, not because they are not loud enough, but because our lives are too loud. The television, the phones, the business of schedules and errands, all of it becomes a wall between us and the voices that matter most. There are people all around us whose suffering is silent. The elderly neighbor who hasn't spoken anyone in days. The single mother counting coins in the grocery line, afraid someone will notice. The child who looks down when others laugh because they carry a sadness too heavy for words. Once I sat beside a woman in a shelter. She said almost nothing, just sat there, her hands folded, her eyes distant. But her silence was not empty, it was full of pain, of stories too deep for words. And so I stayed quietly. I didn't preach. I didn't try to fix anything. I listened with my heart. And in that silence, I heard God speak through her. Jesus heard those cries He saw, the ones others passed by. The blind man, the leper, the widow. He heard what others refused to hear. His silence was never indifference. It was the space where compassion took root. He looked, He listened, and He loved. We must do the same. We must slow down. We must learn again to notice, to be present. The poor do not need our pity. They need our attention. Real, loving, listening attention. Because when we truly hear them, we hear the gospel come alive. So I ask you, this week, will you let silence lead you to someone's hidden cry? Will you make space in your heart to hear what the world ignores? Let be your prayer. Let that be your offering. In the silence, God is already speaking through the poor, through the forgotten, through the wounds of others. Will we have the courage to listen? There is a kind of silence that is not absence, but invitation. An invitation to come home to ourselves, to the truth of who we are before God. We often live far from that truth. We run, we hide, we fill our days with noise and movement because we are afraid of what we might find in the quiet. But it is in that quiet that we are most ourselves. And it is there that God waits for us. We are not defined by our failures or by the masks we wear to fit in. We are not our job titles or the number of followers we have or the wounds we've carried alone for too long. In the silence, we meet the truth beneath it all. We are loved, not because we earn it, but because we are His. We are the sheep the shepherd seeks, the coin the woman searches for, the child the father runs to embrace. I once spoke to a young man who had everything the world admires: success, money, popularity. But inside he was lost. He said to me, "I don't know who I am anymore." I told him, "Go to a chapel. Sit in silence. You don't need to say anything. Just let yourself be looked at." That is prayer, my friends. Letting ourselves be seen and loved by the one who knows us best. Jesus went into the desert not to escape, but to be with the Father. In silence, he was strengthened for his mission. In silence, he found clarity. We, too, must enter that desert, not a place of emptiness, but of encounter. Let us not be afraid to be alone with God. Let us not be afraid of the silence, for it reveals the voice of love. In that silence, we see that we are more than our past, more than our weakness, more than our fear. And so I ask you gently, this week, will you allow silence to remind you of who you are in the eyes of God? Will you set aside even a few minutes to stop, to breathe, to be still before the Lord? Because in that stillness, in that sacred silence, the soul begins to remember. And what remembers is love. There are moments when silence is not only holy, it is healing. In a world so quick to react, to accuse, to divide, silence becomes an act of mercy. How many times have we spoken words we wish we could take back, words born of anger, of fear, of pride? And how many times have we been wounded by the words of others, cut deep by what was said, or by what was never said at all? Mercy begins in silence, a silence that listens before judging, a silence that gives space for another to breathe, to be human, to begin again. When we are silent before another suffering, we are not ignoring it. We are honoring it. We are making room for their dignity, not rushing to fix or correct, but simply to be with them in love. I think of a father I met once. His son had made many mistakes, deep, painful ones. And yet the father didn't shout, didn't condemn. He waited. He prayed. He listened. And when his son finally returned, broken and afraid, the father said only this: "I never stopped loving you." That is the silence of mercy. Jesus showed us this again and again. He did not rush to condemn the woman caught in sin. He knelt beside her. He wrote in the dust. He created a silence strong enough to stop a crowd with stones in their hands. In that silence, mercy was born. We need that kind of silence in our families, in our communities, in our hearts. A silence that pauses before reacting. A silence that softens hardened opinions. A silence that chooses peace over being right. And so I ask you, in your own life, where can silence make space for forgiveness? Where can you withhold harsh words and offer instead a quiet love? Perhaps today or tomorrow you will have the chance to choose mercy, not with a lecture, but with a listening heart. Let that silence be your prayer. Let it be the doorway through which peace can enter again. Because in the silence, God teaches us how to love. God does not shout from mountaintops. He does not speak through the loudest voices or the grandest stages. More often, He speaks from the margins, from the quiet corners of our world that we overlook or pass by. If we want to find Him, we must be willing to go where He dwells among the poor, the forgotten, the broken-hearted. That is where His voice becomes clear. I remember visiting a small village where a woman, old and frail, spent her days caring for orphans, not with much. Only what little she had. Her house was quiet. No television, no noise. Only the soft hum of her hands preparing food. The gentle laughter of children learning how to trust again. She said to me, I do not hear God with my ears, but I feel Him in the silence of every child's smile. That silence, so full of grace, is where God reveals Himself. Jesus chose this same path. He came as a child, born into poverty. He walked with fishermen, touched lepers, sat at the tables of sinners. He chose the margins again and again because that is where love is most needed. He did not speak to dominate, but to draw near, to be close to the ones who had been pushed away. How often do we look for God in the wrong places? In power, in recognition, in noise. But He is in the person sleeping under the bridge, in the eyes of a mother who has no food for her child, in the silence of a hospital corridor. At midnight, God is there, not far, but near, waiting to be seen, waiting to be loved. Let us go to those places. Let us not be afraid of the silence of the margins. Because when we kneel beside the suffering, we are not only serving, we are being evangelized. We are being changed. The poor teach us the gospel. The forgotten reveal Christ. So I invite you, quietly, gently, to go where others do not go, to listen where others do not listen. And in that silence, in that holy ground, you will find the face of God. There is a silence that feels like the end. a silence heavy with grief, disappointment, or fear, a silence that comes after the loss of a loved one, after a door has closed, after a dream has died. Many of our brothers and sisters live in that silence every day. The migrant mother with no home for her children, the young man who feels forgotten in a world moving too fast, the elderly person alone with no one left to call. That silence can feel unbearable, but it is often in that very silence that God begins to speak again. Not with noise, not with thunder, but with hope, quite steady like the dawn. It is in the tomb, sealed and silent, that resurrection begins. In the silence of Mary's heart, after the cross, there was pain, but also the seed of Easter morning. God does not abandon us in silence. He enters it. He dwells in it. And from there, He lifts us up. Hope is born in silence, not because we pretend everything is fine, but because we begin to trust that even in the dark, we are not alone. That even when we do not hear His voice, He is there, patient, faithful, waiting for us to open our hearts once more. Sometimes we look for hope in headlines, in leaders, in miracles that arrive on schedule. But real hope is deeper. It is found in the mother who kisses her child even with empty hands, in the worker who rises each morning without knowing how the bills will be paid, in the person who chooses to forgive again and again. Hope is quiet, but it is strong. It does not shout, but it carries the voice of eternity. So let us not be afraid of the silence. Let us not fill it too quickly with noise or distraction. Let it speak. Let it form us. Let it awaken in us the kind of hope that endures, the kind of hope that acts with compassion, with courage, with faith. And if your heart is in a place of silence right now, know this God is with you. And in that silence, hope is already beginning to grow. Let it grow. Let it rise and let it lead you to love. My dear brothers and sisters, we have walked together through the silence that listens, the silence that heals, the silence that reveals who we truly are, the silence that draws us to the forgotten places, and the silence where hope is born anew. And now, as we prepare to return to our daily lives, I ask you this: do not leave this silence behind. Carry it with you. Make space for it in your homes, in your hearts, in your encounters with others. Let it shape the way you listen. Let it soften the way you speak. Let it open your eyes to those the world has forgotten. Let it move you to tenderness, to mercy, to justice. In the silence, God still speaks. And when we hear His voice, even in the smallest whisper, we cannot remain the same. We are called called to live with greater love, greater courage, greater compassion. Not tomorrow, today. In the grocery line, in your kitchen, at the bedside of someone who needs you, in the quiet moment when no one is watching but God. So, go forward. Go forward with trust. Go forward with hearts wide open. And when the world grows loud, return to the silence. There you will find Him waiting. May God bless you. May He keep you close to His heart. And may you always find Him speaking loudest in the silence. Good luck on your journey, and thank you from the depths of my heart.